Women have more power than men. That's what a group of Neolithic women told me inside a passage mound in Orkney, Scotland. The spirits inside Cuween Hill, a 5,000-year-old burial chamber, revealed a profound message for today's world. You know, we live in a world where balance has been lost, where wisdom is largely ignored, and where control is mistaken for leadership. But these spirit women knew a different way. They lived it. Their power wasn't about dominance. It was vision. It was respect. It came from holding the rhythm of life itself. And in their time, this power was never even questioned. It just was. So what's happened? Well, I believe that we are disconnected from this deep, ancient feminine power. But there are wise, powerful, ancient women who can help us restore this balance of power. And what they shared about their Neolithic lives, about leadership, about sex, about the balance of life and death, could make massive changes to our lives and to our world. The Orkney Islands in far northern Scotland are an absolute treasure trove of spirit encounters. It's a sight whisperer's banquet. For this episode, I'm going to take you inside the chambers of Cuween Hill. Now, when you arrive at the site, there's a short path that takes you to a stile. You climb over that to continue making your way uphill to the mound's entrance. Now, to get into the main chambers, you need to crawl down a 5-meter passageway. The entrance is aligned to the east and the equinox sun. However, the low 5-meter passage is long enough to almost obliterate all the light. It's pretty dark inside, so you need a torch or a headlamp to carry with you. Now, once you get through the entrance tunnel, there's no more crawling. The central chamber is large enough to stand and to walk around. You arrive into a rectangular central chamber with 4 small cells that branch off from it. The tight precision of the stone construction and the corbelled ceiling, it's amazing. But what is even more impressive to me is the engineering of the whole place. Simultaneously with constructing these chambers, they built an entire earthen mound over the whole thing. Now, local Orcadians once called this place Fairy No. They told frightening stories of dangerous magical creatures called trolls that were believed to live here. I didn't meet any trolls. The feeling inside is very quiet, dry, and peaceful. I've been to this site several times, and each time that I visited, the spirits have been very eager and willing to chat. The 4 chambers have housed bones of the ancestors, and curiously, many dog skulls. The radiocarbon analysis of remains dates them to about 4,500 years ago, but who knows how long ago the chambers and the mound were actually built. On a previous encounter here, I met a young male spirit. He was here to consult with the bones of a particular family member. Now, he explained to me that this was the place where bones of specific, special ancestors were placed. The chambers housed the bones of wise ancestors with specific knowledge or specific experience, in order that the living families could come and consult with them for advice. Each year, at the anniversary of the internment, someone would come to see if the particular ancestor wished to remain and continue being of service to the community for another year, or if the ancestor chose not to remain, well, their bones were removed, burned, ground, and spread on the land. While the 3 small cells held bones, the large double-chambered cell served as a consulting and ceremony room, as well as the initial repository for new internments. On this particular visit, I was accompanied by one of my dearest friends who was volunteering at the Ness of Brodgar archaeological dig. Now, there's a lot to explain about the ancient practice of consulting the ancestors in these passage mounds, but I want to share the information that a fascinating group of spirit women disclosed to my friend and me about their Neolithic lives. So as we settled into the central chamber, I explained to my friend about this being a place to consult with the ancestors whose bones were in these chambers. As I was explaining this, female spirits began to gather around. One spirit came forward and interrupted us. Depending on what my friend was most interested in, we could consult with ancestor spirits in any of the 4 chambers. It was explained to us that the 4 chambers held the bones of ancestors who had knowledge and expertise of women's business, agricultural, law, and history. Well, my friend selected women's business. What ensued was a 2-hour-long spirit conversation. We covered a huge range of topics, from the role of women in leadership, to sex and pregnancy, to Neolithic life, art, music, and it all wrapped around a deeper understanding of the power of women. Okay, let's go deep. I want to kick things off by sharing a profound conversation between a particularly stern spirit woman and my friend. I thought it would be good for you to hear the actual field recording made on my phone inside this chamber. This particular spirit had been keeping to the back of the crowd where she kept an eagle eye on me, and from time to time I would catch her piercing gaze. Finally, she came forward and she asked, "So why are you asking all these questions? What are you going to do with this knowledge? Why are you curious about all this?" My friend said,
"Well, my answer would be, if I don't start to cry, I think our world now is in a very bad place. We're very warlike. Knowledge isn't respected. And I'm just very interested in a time when people lived with a different way of thinking about life."
So she's saying, well, what happened? Why is that the case?
Oh.
Greed, pretty much greed.
Yeah. And men started to believe that they had to have power over women, and men tend to be more warlike by nature, and they've just taken it to such an extreme that in many places in the world now, women are given no respect whatsoever, and they're treated like property, and the world is just in a very sad place right now. The future doesn't look very good at all.
So I'll just repeat exactly if I can. That's sad to hear, because women have more power than men and always have.
And that's what men understand and don't want to accept. So their answer to understanding it is to squash that power and make women believe that they're not worthwhile.
So your women, so I'm just repeating again.
Yeah.
So your women would have had to allow that.
You're right. Yes. And in some places where women have tried to fight back, they've been punished with death, and they've been told they can't have any education, and it just seems like not too much trouble, that's not the right thing, but too hard to push back against the men who have given themselves so much power.
She's saying, I can only imagine the only reason women would allow this to happen is because of the threat of stopping the miracle of life.
Mm.
At which point, we both dissolved into tears. Across the 2 hours, I think there were about 16 female spirits who answered our questions about music and clothing and livestock, crops, the weather, as well as questions that we had about the general living conditions in Neolithic times. One of the interesting conversations was about leadership. In this culture, leadership was not exclusive to gender or bloodline. The role of leader was filled by someone with a particular capability that was highly valued: the capacity to see beyond the immediate issue. One spirit woman explained simply that, well, those who can see bigger than the issue are leaders. I think we need to remember that. Those who can see bigger than the issue are leaders. My friend asked a lot about how they lived and was curious about what they looked like. Now, most were wearing short dresses, and they were woven from a combination of plant fiber and animal hair, and many of them had shawls, draped in a variety of ways, and affixed with pins of bone or antler, and there were occasional pieces of fur and leather. Some wore protective clothing, made of leather that was built and shaped especially for different kinds of physical labor, sort of like elbow pads and knee pads and different kinds of aprons. One fact that they shared that I found interesting was about Neolithic bedding. For maximum insulation when sleeping, they used 2 full fur hides, one beneath you with the fur side down and the smooth leather side against your body, and another hide on top of you, again, with the leather side down toward your body and the fur side facing up. I also remember that one spirit provocatively asked if we wanted to know about sex in their time. Here's what she said. To enjoy good sex, you surrender fully. But this means absorbing your partner's energy. After the sexual act, it's crucial to cleanse this energy from your body in order to return to your core. Now, she explained that this was achieved through bathing rituals and, more shockingly, by consuming spoiled eggs to induce purging, or alternatively, exposing oneself to the sun, which was both the preferred and more effective cleansing method. Perhaps some of the most profound revelations came from their views on relationships. Now, what we think of as marriage, these women called partnering. These partnering relationships were temporary agreements and were formed for particular purposes like having children or traveling or building something from a shared vision. Their concept of love was not conditional or exclusionary. They spoke of love as a reciprocal bond, a powerful energy, and a feeling that could be generated from within and freely expressed toward everything, people and nature. Their community's birthing practices were also fascinating. A specialist birthing woman would dictate specific diets at certain stages of pregnancy to ensure both the mother's and the baby's health. One example was avoiding milk late in pregnancy to increase the newborn's desire for it post-birth. These women revealed so much. And as I said, it was a 2-hour conversation. I've only shared a small part of what they talked about. Our big takeaway was that they lived in a society where every aspect of life was in balance. From the way they connected with each other to how they embraced the natural and spiritual worlds. They were powerful women, or should I say, they were women of great power. Well, my friend and I eventually crawled out of the passage and back into the daylight and back into this world. But we were not the same as when we entered. Things had changed, or maybe things had been remembered. The spirit women of Cuween spoke with a clarity that left no space for doubt. Women have always held great power, power that is and always was. From the rhythm of life itself, from the balance they upheld and the wisdom that they carried, standing here, looking out across this ancient land, we thought of their questions to us about women's power. What happened? How did this balance slip? And then the deeper question, who allowed it? The spirits didn't ask this in anger. They weren't looking to lay blame. They were simply curious. Because they lived in a time when power was balanced and constant, when leadership wasn't about dominance, about vision. That time feels gone. And in its place, we've built a world that no longer values balance. Our world seems to be one where wisdom is ignored, where leadership is confused with control, and where the deep, natural power that these women carried has been forgotten, diminished, or maybe even dismissed. Now, I don't believe this wisdom is completely lost. It lingers in places like this, in the land, in the stones, in the whispers of those who still remember. It lingers in us, Because this isn't just their story, it's ours. If we choose to listen, if we choose to remember, maybe we can begin to rebuild this feminine power and regain the balance we so desperately look for. If you want to take a deeper dive, go to my website. You can download a free ebook with powerful lessons, deep contemplations, and a shamanic ritual for you to perform. My website is eagleheart.com.au. If you want to experience more ancient wisdom and sound healing, follow, subscribe, and be sure and click the notification bell so you can join me for more shamanic adventures. If you liked this story, check out Lessons in Stone, Ancient Teachings of Unity for Today's Disconnected World from Season 1. And keep a lookout for Ireland's Wise Ancestors, rituals that once guided everyday life, coming later this season.